So what's going on, guys? This is an episode of DIY Dan Mechanical. Today we're going to be doing front shocks on a 2001 Ford F250. This is a very easy do-it-yourself with basic tools. So let's get to it. So since I had to pull the tire off to kind of give you guys a better view of how to do the shock, even though it's not necessary, I did put it on jack stands. Now as far as jacking up the front of the truck, you can lift it anywhere on the axle shaft or underneath the lower shackle mount where the leaf spring mounts. It will make it a lot easier to do the shocks if you take the tire and wheel off, and I also rotated my tires since I had it up in the air.
For the driver's side, you can place the jack directly under the pumpkin of the axle.
So the first thing I'm going to do is take the tire and wheel off, get it out of the way. A hook like this works really well to pop the factory caps off. There's a recessed area for it to fit in. Pry it back a little bit, it'll pop right off. And we're going to remove the lug nuts. Now they are a 21 millimeter or a 13/16. I've used both. So after getting the tire and wheel off, there's two bolts that hold the shocks on. Now the reason I'm doing my shocks is you see all this wetness right here. That means this shock has been leaking, which means it's not doing what it's supposed to do anymore. I've got a 18 millimeter socket, and that's what the top bolt is. I'm going to take that off. And then I have a 15 millimeter socket for the bottom. Now the lower bolt does have a self-retaining nut. However, sometimes those will strip out, so you might have to use a wrench or a socket on that as well. One time it was so rusted out I had to actually grind the bracket off of the nut so I could put a socket on both sides. Now there should be some resistance here, and that is going up and down way too easy. So that thing is shot. So most shocks will have some type of a retaining device holding them together. You don't want to take that off until you get the first side started. So we're going to go ahead and put the top on. The rod side of the shock will always go towards the top. Most shocks come with a cover so you don't see the rod. Here's a quick view of the old one that did not have the cover. So I went ahead and started the top nut. So you want to have your lower bolt ready to put in the lower mount, because as soon as you cut this plastic that's holding the shock's going to start pressing out, and it's easier just to get it started when it starts pushing out the first time versus trying to leverage it back up if you're not prepared. If you do miss that opportunity, you can muscle it up to get the bolt started. Once you get that bolt started, you can go ahead and cut the remaining plastic off of the shock. You can tighten the upper and lower nuts and bolts down pretty tight because there is a metal bushing in the upper and lower shock mount to prevent you from over tightening. Be careful if you're using your hand to hold that self-retaining nut. I have had those skip around and pinch my finger before. And just like the bottom, the upper nut will bottom out on that metal bushing before over tightening and damaging the rubber isolators. And that's all there is to it, guys. So now we're just putting the tire and wheel back on. So I see a lot of people trying to muscle these tires on and not being able to see what you're doing to get them started. So an easier way to do it is to sit down, get your legs underneath the tire and wheel, and leverage your legs to lift up the tire and wheel. And that also frees you up an extra hand. You can also move your legs to turn the wheel as you try and line it up. Remember to always tighten your lug nuts down in the star pattern, and then I always go over them one more time to make sure they are tight. If you want to torque them to spec, it's 165 foot-pounds. Hope this video gave you some good information and helped you out. If you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe to my channel. Hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.